Good evening, Tando Book Club lovers. It is 7 p.m. and we are here with a great live for you. I am so excited for tonight's live. I actually don't know how to contain myself. I have never been this excited for a book club live as I am, and it's for two reasons. The guest that we have today is absolutely awesome. And number two, the book that we'll be discussing is just delicious, 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 delicious. So, as is my custom, I always like to start with a little quote. And today's quote, I think, sums up the book that we're going to discuss. And it's a quote by one of my faves, Chinua Achebe. If you don't like someone's story, write your own. And his well-known works include Things Fall Apart, A Man of the People, No Longer at Ease, and Arrow of God. If you don't like someone's story, write your own. I think this sums up the author's why for starting or reading this book. And this is going to be one of the key themes, I think, in our discussion tonight. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest is Ms. Ntombi Malaza, the brainchild, the founder, and the voice and the heart behind IBHUKU. Ntombi is an experienced designer, brand marketer, cultural insights lead, and content creator. Driven by the love for creative brand strategy and culture, she takes pride in providing the best possible opportunities for growth for companies and teams. As a head of brand, her goals include brand growth and developing insight-led solutions. In addition to her primary job functions, and the reason why she is here, she is an amazing content developer. And one of the channels on which she develops this amazing content that helps us to imbibe, immerse, and encompass and learn more about our vibrant African culture is IBHUKU. Ntombi, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you so much, Selena. And hi to everybody listening in today on this live. Thank you for having me.
So it's we're just going to say hi to everybody. If you're here, whether you're watching live or later, just drop a comment in the comment box. We will respond to you, believe it or not. And just let us know where you are watching from. And if you have read Hlomu The Wife by Dudu Busani-Dube, that is the book that we will be getting stuck in a few minutes from now. If you have read Hlomu The Wife by Dudu Busani-Dube, please let us know in the comments and let us know what you think about that. And if you've got any questions for Ntombi, you can shoot. We'll be checking those comments live as we keep talking. So Ntombi, what is IBHUKU and why did you start it?
So IBHUKU is a bookish space. It basically celebrates the love and experience of reading. For those who don't know, IBHUKU is actually the word book in isiZulu or in the Nguni languages. So basically I create bookish content and I share it on YouTube and I amplify it on my personal social media channels. So the content I create varies between book reviews, vlogs, and a conversation platform with authors called The Bookshelf. And this all sits on my YouTube channel then called IBHUKU. So you can find me there or on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter.
Awesome, awesome, awesome stuff. Very fascinating. So there's the book reviews and there's the bookshelves. I've also seen that you've done read-alongs. What are read-alongs about?
So those are basically to encourage people to read. If anything, getting somebody to pick up that book, sit and have a session, a good reading session. I'm hoping that those episodes really encourage people to engage in reading in the ways that they would want, in spaces that would make them feel comfortable. So it's also to just show that you can read anytime, you can read anywhere, you can read for however long. You don't have to read for hours on end. 2 minutes, a quick 15-minute read is just all you need. So those episodes are specifically to encourage people to actually partake in the action of reading.
Yeah, I really found those very fascinating when I was on your channel, because I was like, oh, okay, is she going to read out loud? And then you were like, okay, we're reading now. And then you read. And I was like, oh, okay, so we're reading now. So I better get a book and start reading. So, yes, definitely. I love that, encouraging the action of reading, because it is sometimes so hard in the world we live in today to unplug from everything and just get stuck in and read a book. But wow, does it make such a difference when you do unplug and immerse yourself in a book and just do the one thing? So that's really, really amazing. So, last question before we get into Hlomu the Wife. Tell us why the voices of African female authors are important in shaping the collective African narrative. I ask this because I encourage you all to get onto Ntombi's channel, IBHUKU, on YouTube. And you'll see that she's actually done some reviews on quite a few African authors and a few African female authors as well. So I feel like you can give us a very seasoned and informative view of this topic. Why are these voices important?
Diversity, guys. Diversity in voices, narratives, characters, experiences, and thus diversity in storytellers. We need the people that will give us juicy, meaty, different kinds of stories to enjoy and know more about. You know, we have such a rich, relevant, and necessary story that I think it would do the writing community and the reading community a great injustice if we don't celebrate or profile African female writers. So we have many, we know some, but we don't have nearly enough as we should to tell all of our stories in all the weird, wonderful, and worthy ways that they deserve to be told. So I really think we need to amplify African female voices as best as we can in all the platforms that we have to just get our stories out there, understand, learn more about other people's experiences as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. I like that answer. So I know that there are probably some people, because I'm seeing some people have joined the live and are watching anxiously. Please remember to let us know where you're from and if you've read Hlomu the Wife or any of the Hlomu series by Dudu Busani-Dube, and let us know what you thought of it. And if you haven't read it, please also let us know that as well. I can't promise that we won't have spoiler alerts because, you know, Ntombi and I have been talking about this on Twitter, on WhatsApp, on Instagram, and then like we even just had to have a call just to talk between us about the book and how fabulous the experience was of reading this book. So Hlomu the Wife is the first of a 5-part series written by Dudu Busani-Dube. It is a love story. It is termed or described as a love story. And in this book, we journey through this very intense, intoxicating, passionate relationship between Hlomu and her bae, Mqele, who then becomes her husband. And we journey through sort of like the first decade of their relationship. So from seeing each other, falling in love, getting married, and what married life is like for them. And you would think that what is so fascinating about that, but listen to this discussion and you'll find out. So whether you're joining us from YouTube or Facebook, please let us know in the comment box and give us your questions or your opinion of what Hlomu the Wife has been like for you if you've read it, or if you haven't read it, let us know as well and tune into this discussion. So the first thing, the book is written from Hlomu's point of view. What's your take on that?
Sure. So I suppose it really gives us a view of when it starts. Hlomu really gives us a view from outside of the family, right? Before she even becomes part of this amazing Zulu's family. And I think having told the story from her perspective, we really get a personal view of how she thinks in meeting Mqele, how she thinks as a young Black woman, being ambitious, working, and now having her life really have to change to fit her new lifestyle, her new life and her new commitments. But I think getting the story from Hlomu's point of view is really special in that we get a very different view as to this new life that she is now introduced into. And also I would say that, you know, her tone is very self-deprecating irritating. There's that kind of sense of humor that kind of holds the story light-hearted and gives us a bit of a neutral stance in the story before it all picks up in the progression. But I like that there's a humorous element to it, but there's obviously that backing seriousness of this narrative and the love story. So getting it from Hlomu gives us a very unique perspective into this kind of life. And I mean, I won't dive too deep as yet into what I mean by this kind of life. But I think getting it from her point of view is quite special and unique in that.
Definitely. I think one of the things that I enjoyed about that narrative point of view is, like you said, the humor. She doesn't take herself too seriously, but she also does take herself seriously. But it's also the intimacy of the tone of voice. Like, she lets you in on her innermost thoughts, which I think is one of the things that immediately disarms you. So there's the humor that makes you laugh at situations which you normally wouldn't laugh at if you were confronted by them in everyday life. You would be almost a little bit judgmental and a little bit distant. And then there's the intimacy, like she's talking to a confidant. It's very much like having a very long gossipy coffee with a very close friend. And she speaks to us like that. And I just find that it was so incredible that Dudu Busani-Dube was able to carry that throughout the whole book without making it sound like an I book. Have you ever read those books where it's I did this, and you're like, there's too much but this is very much spoken from the first person narrative, but what it creates is a feeling of intimacy and a feeling of I'm talking to my confidant. And I think that's what the thing that disarms you, together with the humor, to then now go on this roller coaster ride that's highly emotional as we get through the book. The other thing that I think also struck me is I was struck by how young she was at the beginning of her story. So I think that was the other thing that personally disarmed me, because I thought, well, yeah, this makes sense. When I was 22, I probably would have done that. I probably would have said that. Yeah, those would have been the things that I was looking at. And so for me, I think personally, the journey was almost like visiting my unrepentant youth and my wild youth and this voice of myself when I was younger. Very quick-witted, almost a little bit naive, and almost like very happy-go-lucky and carefree, and we'll roll with the punches, and not thinking too deeply about some of the consequences. I really did find that very refreshing about the point of view. And then what about her journey from the beginning? Because at the beginning of the book, she's 22. Towards the end of the book, she's already celebrated her 30th birthday. So this story is spanning pretty much a huge chunk of a decade when you think about it. What was your sense in terms of her character development?
I really think, just looking at that time frame, I feel like that a lot happened in just under a lifetime of events. Right? She really lived through it. She really comes into the book very young. We know, like you say, her innermost thoughts, her aspirations. You kind of feel her energy as a young lady. And then as it develops, you also realize how her identity changes when she meets Mkele and the relationship and the family. So she really lives a full life in that space of years. I would definitely think that is the main part of the story as well, is really unpacking her journey through meeting Umkele, the relationship, the new family, taking part in, now this taxi industry family, and their businesses, and moving from a rural girl to a young working lady, a journalist, and now she's almost like a celebrity towards the end, and she has to hold her own as well within her family structure. So she really transitions from one character or one space of her identity to the next quite quickly, I feel. I'm 30 now, and I have not even gone through some of or half of the things that she's gone through. So her lifetime in this narrative is quite packed, and I think quite extreme as well, because all of the shifts in her life are very distinctive. They're not, it's not too much of the same, but it's quite a steep progression to from how she started to who she is at the end of the book. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So the way she develops and changes, and the losses that she suffers in terms of innocence and goodness is really is quite harrowing to go through emotionally, because she brings you close to heart at the beginning. So I found that, I found that drove my passion to finish the story, kind of like, well, what will happen next? And without trying to give too much away at the beginning, I don't know how successful we're going to be in this conversation, to not have too many spoiler alerts. Keketa Sadibe is joining us from Facebook. I haven't read the book yet, she says. I've heard only good things and will be adding it to the read list. Honey, you're not only going to be adding this to the read list, it's probably going to be the whole 5 books. Thank you for joining us. And anyone else, if you have read the book, please let us know in the comments. If you haven't, please also let us know in the comments. We're live on Facebook and YouTube. So the world, the setting, the time, and the place. It is mostly set in Joburg. We do have some flashbacks to rural or remote areas and to KZN. So those are really the 3 key spaces in which the book kind of all the story unfolds, the time, the setting, and the place. And we've got Mqele's family, who's quite big and overbearing, and then we've got her family, who comes in almost a sort of a townified juxtaposition to the taxi empire that Mqele and his brothers are building. What was your sense in terms of how this world was built? Was it realistic? Was it quite powerful? What was your sense of that?
I think it was really realistic. I mean, you could almost picture every move. You could picture every descriptor that Dudu would play in this, right? And it was very, very relatable, I would feel, in terms of if you've ever ridden in a taxi, if you've been at a taxi rank, you could almost imagine the atmosphere. You can almost imagine the air and how it feels to be in the front seat, counting the money, walking to your destination. So I think there are moments that are very relatable to possibly a commuter. Definitely think that the setup is spot on. Yeah, Joburg is vibey. Joburg is unpredictable sometimes. And I think you also pick that up in how their lives are set up, whether it's just Mqele or Hlomu, in how they interact, him fetching her from work. You really pick it up. It's realistic. It's happening right before your eyes as you read from page to page. I really love that setup. And I think also it gives you a good view into what it means to be in the taxi industry. Some people look at that, hear that from the news, they look at it from afar. But through this story and this narrative, you actually get to see that these people have faces, these people have personalities, and they love deeply, they're expressive, they get angry, they get happy. And I think it also relates to definitely how it was set up and how they interact and engage as characters. So you have to be almost overbearing in space for us to imagine these characters and how they live and where they live. So I really enjoyed, getting that unique look into the taxi industry from a taxi driver, taxi owner point of view. And definitely from Hlomu, who is, I suppose in the beginning, and then she gets looped into the whole thing. So it's very well set up and very believable in how the characters move in the journey in the space.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, the first chapter of the book, she's describing her like a typical day in her life, and you get that feeling, the movement, the rhythm, the beat of the city, Bree taxi rank, the marshals, the whole vibe. It comes through. It's like you are there, and you know all of the little things that we take for granted that are actually little rituals and rites of how we live our lives day to day. In terms of you know collecting the money and the things that we hate when we get on taxis. Like if you've ever been on a taxi in South Africa, you're just like when she's describing it, you're like, yeah, you know. I can't, I really don't want to do that. So I really felt like she did that really well. Fungai Anthony Socks has joined us on Facebook. He says, read the book. Dudu Busani knows how to paint images. The vivid descriptions were on point, a wonderful piece of literature. I heartily agree with you. Very vivid descriptions. And she was quite concise. And I think that's something that's quite interesting because the book itself is over 500 pages, but the descriptions are quite concise and to the point. And she uses these cute little shortcuts, I would say, that really get your point across. Like it is written for an African reader. And so if you've ever traveled to South Africa, there are things that you could immediately pick up, like the tracksuits, the GT Sprinter, the Brie taxi rank, the pup and liver, the chicken lickin', like the whole thing. And she's faithful to it, and I love that. And I think it reinforces that quote by Chinua Achebe, if you don't like someone's story, write your own. Makanaka Mawengere is joining us again. Hi, it's nice to see you tuning in from Facebook. Anyone else visiting? We've just seen our views going up and up and up. It must be Ntombi in the house telling us her stories that has attracted all of this interest. So the genre, the love story. Everybody says it's a love story. When you look for the book in the bookstore, it's a love story. When you look for it on Amazon, it's a love story. What kind of love story is this?
I questioned this so heavily when I got the book. I questioned it when it started, and I think the first 2 chapters, it really reels you into the beginning of their love. So you almost get courted right along with Hlomu when it kicks off. But then halfway through, you start now understanding the complexity of their love. And you start questioning, like, what kind of love is this? How do you love a person in this way? And what kind of love is this person giving? I have never in my life encountered this kind of thing, right? And I think that's possibly the intentional provocation on Dudu's part to get us to relook the many shapes and forms that we believe love to be and love to come in, right? So it's almost an interrogation of the rosy and fruity perceptions of love that we have. We all know it. Love is difficult. It's a choice you make every day. It's something that you need to work hard at. But we also have this lofty, dreamy concept of what love is. And I think here in this love story, we see those two tensions playing at hand, right? There's the rawness of love between Hlomu and Mqele, and it shows the darker side to what love is. It's misgivings, it's manipulations, the obsessions, oh my God, the obsessions, and the toxic nature and the slavish loyalty, the self-deprecating love that they have for each other. And I think, we want to believe so badly in the goodness of love. And for me, that's what kept me reading. That's what got me to the end, is that I was hoping for a better ending. And maybe that is, the love story ending that we want, that fairy tale ending that we seek. But we never really get it, do we? It's raw throughout. And there are moments of gentleness between their love where you're like, maybe now he's coming around, maybe she's coming around, maybe their love is becoming softer. But then you get that hard knock that actually, no, it is difficult. It is a troublesome love. And I kept push and pull and back and forth with understanding the kind of love that they share for each other. And I suppose also there are those other forms of for family, how does that play in, and the loyalty that is attached to that. To what end, family secrets, to what end, each other, to what end, when it's a sacrifice of love as well. And I think we see that very harshly with Mqele and Hlomu.
I have to say that the question that you keep asking, to what end, is really quite profound for me, because I hadn't actually thought about their love story in terms of to what end, because I was deeply enmeshed, right? So, when I first heard about this book, it was when I joined a book club like a couple years back, and it was all the rage, and it was the first book that we chose to read. And I just couldn't get with the program. Like, I couldn't keep up with the discussions. I never started reading it, and I always thought, yeah, I'll get back to it. I'll get back to it. And a lot of people were quite conflicted about the love story angle, because they were like, yeah, people say it's a love story, but do you really think it's a love story? Is that love? And I was like, wow, I've got to circle back to this. So when you suggested that we read it, I was like, I jumped at the chance, because I was like, this is on my bucket list and I have to get it done. And this is, what a better way to get it done than for the book club. And so I remember our first conversation when you were like, oh, how far have you gone? I'm on chapter 10. And she had literally just sent me like a screen, like a picture of the book. You were like, I've just gone to the bookstore. I've gotten it. Here it is. And I'm so excited. And then you're like, how far have you been? I'm on chapter 10. And I was like, oh, I'm thinking I'll do 2 chapters a day. What? So then the next day I get my copy, and like the whole day. And then by the end of the evening, I'm on chapter 13. And now I'm like, what is going on? Now I'm distracted. I can't be having conversations with people anymore, because I'm just like, what's going on? And like, I keep reading the next day, and like 2 a.m. Saturday morning, I finished. And like, I remember describing it to you earlier, like a book hangover. Like you feel like you've had a long night out, but it was just because you needed to finish the book. And I think for me, like you, I was like, I hope that these guys get their act together and they stop being toxic. And like, Mqele becomes a better guy, and Hlomu, does a little bit of growing up, and it didn't happen. And for me, it was because the voice is so naive and young at the beginning, it's so easy to fall in love with them as a couple. I mean, he's this taxi owning dude with his very simple, very machismo, male, typical, almost a little bit chauvinistic, but I'll die for you, walk through fire kind of thing going on. And he almost has a little bit of he's almost a little bit also taken aback that she chooses him, and like they just fall for each other in such a open way. Like, his admiration of her is so naked. It's so like, he doesn't hold anything back. Everybody in his life knows what he feels for her. But then as you go throughout the story, and as they get older, and as real life, really begins to happen, you start to be like, but if you love her so much, why? Why would you do that? And there are so many points in the book I'm like, why? And even she is like, why? She's like, Mqele, why? And so the whole book I'm going, like, as I'm reading the love story, I'm going, Hlomu, Hlomu, Hlomu. Like so my whole family is listening to me, like the last couple of days reading this book, going, Hlomu, Hlomu, Hlomu. Then I'm like, but Mqele, why? Like, so I'm oscillating between those two things. And then at some point in the middle of the book, after they've been married, and you start to realize, okay, it's not getting better. And you start to realize that, okay, Dudu is going to give us a whole story. Like, she's not going to sugarcoat anything. You then start to feel like, okay, all right, the chickens are coming home to roost. People are the karma has now showed up. And you start to deal with that. And it's very disquieting and settling. So one of the things that concerned me about calling it a love story is this what we're calling love in the 21st century? Is this how Black women are viewing love? Is this how young women are viewing love? Like, it's manipulative, it's obsessive, it is violent, it is toxic, it is changing not for the good, but for the, like, worse, becoming cynical and hardened. Is this what it is? And then another aspect of me was like, well, Dudu, why did you stay? Is it was it the money, or was it about the power? Because there is a power attached to danger. and there's definitely a lot of danger around Mqele and his family, that they wear very attractively. I have to say this in a very attractive way, but it's still dangerous. Like the moral code in you is like, sissy, we're playing in tough territory. So like, I found that disquieting. I mean, do people? Is this how we are loving? Is this what our marriages look like? And has this become the norm? That was the question that I had about the love story.
I think, I mean, I completely agree to those points. I think also on my part, it was a matter of asking myself, is this what we are now attracted to when it comes to love? Like, is it the power? Is it the money? Is it, I suppose the fame kind of came later and the money kind of came later as well. But, you know, do we stay because we are now attracted to these elements that feed into the love that we have? And then on the other hand, I was thinking about how I think I can't speak for everybody, right? But in my experiences and what I'm seeing and the conversations that people are starting to be quite real and cynical about love. Like the fairy tale, a lot of people don't really gravitate towards that. You know, if somebody cheats, they're out. If there's just an impatience when it comes to love. But I think in this book, we really see that patient side of I will fix him, that side of I will sort out this situation. Things will work out in the end. We said I do, and therefore we need to stick it out. And whatever, you know, come what may, we will figure out this love story. And I don't know, firstly going into marriage, as a young lady going into marriage, I had those questions of, yes, is this what is this how we're defining love, whether in this book or outside as a people? Is this how we are engaging with love and expressing what it is? But at the same time, like you've mentioned, why did Hlomu stay? Why did you put up with all of that? Why did you put up with all the crime, the money even? Because at first she wasn't too comfortable with the money situation, and how the money was dealt with the business, and how Mqele handled his money and handled himself. So there were a lot of red flags that I feel like she kind of put in the back seat and was like, something will give, something's going to get better. But again, is love that that notion of trying beyond what you can give? And I questioned myself many times and questioned Hlomu many times as to what would I tolerate and why is she tolerating this and taking this version of her own.
I totally agree with you. Like I am because the narrative point of view is so disarming, because you laugh the whole way through, even if you start to cry later in the book. You know, Hlomu still has the ability to make you laugh. So you feel like you're in conversation with a smart woman and an intelligent character, which I give kudos to Dudu Busani-Dube, because I think that's her coming through in that character, that the wittiness, the ability to observe herself and the ironies within herself, because as you said, there were red flags. And with each red flag, you know, finding bags of cash at home, you know, unexplained absences. Like there's so many, I can't even get into them on the live. But with all of these red flags, she is like, in the way she tells the story, she's like, oh, look, there's a red flag. We should probably do something about that. But no, I'm going to do this. I love him, or I'm going to go shopping, or I'm going to look after the kids, or I'm going to do this. So it was very, very interesting how she did that, because I felt like it's almost like listening to the conversation you have when you're about to give into an impulse that you know is wrong. The you know, it's like that the fight that you have when you're like, oh, should I have another piece of cake? Oh, I'm supposed to be Hey there. And we're back. So yeah, that was so the like just that she would share a love story in that way was quite insightful to me because I was like, oh, okay, so there's something dangerous about this love and something toxic about this kind of love. Moving on to the rest of the characters, because you did highlight the fact that the book is also talking about family members, love in a family. And I think that comes through both with Hlomu and her family, and then Kele and his family, and then the family that they become together. That all of these flawed people with some very toxic relational behavior patterns and some very weird relationship issues have a real love that is believable in spite of all of those things. And there are characters that drive the story forward. People like Mandisa, people like Kosana, who are there always around us, but they have either information that becomes revealed later that drives the story forward, or they drop a few bombs along the way. Who were some of your favorite supporting characters and impact characters along the way?
I think I definitely loved Mandisa's character. In the beginning, her character div, you were really asking yourself, what is this character about? Why is she so spicy? Why does she hate so much, you know? But as we start getting to know Mandisa, and I suppose towards the end of her character, we really see the unpacking of her journey. And then you now understand why she acted the way that she did and said the things that she said and rattled the cage as hard as she did. I really felt like Mandisa's character was the embodiment of the pain, the turmoil experience as being part of this family, right? I don't know if Dudu made that quite intentional, but I think it kind of came through in that there are a lot of things happening in this space that keep getting brushed off, but Mandisa in particular refused to not tackle the challenges, to not tackle the feelings of what it meant to be part of this family. So yes, there was a lot of trauma brought through her character, but I think it was necessary, especially for this type of family. You couldn't just brush things off. And I think we get to understand that better towards the end, like I'd mentioned, obviously, because her journey is now unpacked a lot more. You understand why she is with Nkosana. I now forgot. But why is she part of this family where her child is? Because you hear of the child, but you never know where the child fits into this whole narrative, and you really start getting the gist of that. So Mandisa is definitely one of my favorite characters. I love the idea of the children. I think that brought a certain innocence to this whole story, and the idea that they are the ones that are always protected in the family. It was really just protect the kids. The kids shouldn't be exposed to this. So I think for me, the children really represented the innocence of the relationships that they had in the family, and also the idea of new beginnings with coming into their lives. And yeah, all the children brought a softness to each character that I quite enjoyed. And I love that they weren't sidelined in the narratives. You'd always hear of, oh, the child had to leave the room because now a serious conversation had to take place. But I love that. And definitely Nkosana. Nkosana came in and out, but he was a very prominent character in terms of how the family is run. I mean, he's become the head of the household. He's the oldest one. He had to become the head of the household with the parents dying off and taking care of all of his brothers. So all the big decisions, all the big moments, he was always of, and I really enjoyed his character coming through boldly, but in increments. I really did enjoy his character as well.
Yeah, Mandisa for me is like that. She's like that aunt in your family that just shows up at the family reunions, is always just slightly off, like slightly off. Like she's either coming from a drinking binge or in the middle of the one. And like she's always saying things that set people on edge because Mandisa is somebody I think who embodied the theme of family secrets. Her origins are shrouded in secrecy, and we only get to know them towards the very, very end, towards as we coming to the end of the book, just after the climax. And then we're like, oh, so that's why she's just acting all tore up, all jacked up all the time. And then, but just the way that she comes across, like every time she would come into a scene in the book, I would also feel uncomfortable. I'd always be like, oh, something's about to pop off now. Mandisa's about to do something, and it escalated and she became more belligerent and more aggressive as the book went on. And it drove the story along because it started to uncover and unmask a lot of things that characters in the book were masking through impressions management, which I think is something that Mkele did very well at the beginning. He was so enamored by his love, he wanted to protect it and to carry on a pretense of things not being a certain way, or at least shielding Hlomu from certain things. But Mandisa is the one who continues. It's like she starts peeling, and then by the time that they've been around a little bit later, she starts to rip that off. And I think one of the things is because she's a sharp contrast to Hlomu. So these are two women that have entered the family by means of their relationship with the men in the family, but their status is not the same. They are not revered the same. They're completely different, and their influence in the family is different. One is tolerated while one is celebrated. One maintains her position because of the blackmail through the secrecy that she has, or the secrets she's holding, and the other one is shrouded from the secrets up to a certain point because they want to preserve a goodness or an innocence that she brings, or a respectability that she brings to the family. So it's very interesting, those two characters and the way that their contrasts, every time they come together, something moves the plot forward in their encounter. And Mandisa only becomes more aggressive. So I thought that was very, very interesting. Like you and Nkosana, like from the very first moment when he brings his kids over, you're just like, who's this dark but quiet but dangerous man who's almost appealing, but also I don't know how I feel about him. And you have questions because you're like, but where are the mothers of these children? And then as their stories start to come out, you're like, oh, but Nkosana, really, shouldn't you have known better as the father figure? And then when he starts to reveal some of his reactions as we get to know him better, you're like, actually, this guy has a deep desire for his family to be whole and healthy. And so then you're like, oh, what's going on here? So very, very colorful, because I must say at the beginning, I thought that Dudu was quite brave to have such a big cast in terms of the Zulu brothers. I mean, 8 strong personalities, and to make them come out very differently. You've got Sambalo, who speaks very slowly, and he has like a little love story that's happening as a subplot throughout the story. You've got Nkosana and all of his mystery and being the eldest. You've got Kawe, who is the lookalike of Mkele, but who, also seems to be a big brother, but he's also a little bit dodged because he's the one with the most girlfriends throughout the book. Then you've got Nkaba and Mandisa and their very toxic relationship where they're just kind of like egging each other on throughout the book and just making it, worse. So you've got all of these brothers, Mkoki and Mapande and Nsika, and all of them, when they are first introduced, you're like, this is too much overload. I can't deal with this. And then as you get towards the end of the book, you're like, oh, okay, so this one is like this one is like this, and this one is the reason for this. So I thought the cast in terms of the characters was very well done. And the fact that there were 8 brothers in his family, such a huge family with all of that mystery and darkness. And then you have her family, which is just her and her twin and her like Gen Z little sister who can't stand anyone for most of the book. And her parents, like her mom and her mom's respectability, and her dad, who's very much like very short and to the point statements, but powerful statements that all like, girls with daddy issues are like, oh. So very interesting juxtapositions of the two families, and all of them, I think she gave them good moments in the book where you felt like, okay, wow, this is a full and a whole story. And last sort of few remarks. Dudu Busani-Dube. How are we feeling about her as a writer and how she did this book?
So, I mean, I loved her writing style. The fact that she caught me from page 1 till page 500 and whatnot. I kudos to her. She really wrangled and pulled the story together so well. Each character complements each other. Each chapter. I love that the chapters are short and quite choppy, but not fragmented. Sometimes when the book has too many chapters, it feels like very fragmented. I think she really carried that string from chapter to chapter really well and beautifully. I think the only criticism I have of the writing is some of the typos across the book. And I think in one of our conversations while we were reading it, we were asking ourselves about a second edition, maybe, you know, the benefits that would come with that. But the typos for me did stand out, and they were a bit of a, why do we typo here? How can we not have this again? But I did enjoy the way that the story was all round written. I do feel though that the end left me with more questions than answers. Even though towards the end things did quieten down. I mean, we had the Hlomu's second pregnancy and the drama around that. But even when the child was born, and it made me uncomfortable that things kind of ended on a comfortable note. I just feel like I have a lot of questions, and I'm hoping that they will be answered in the next few books that I haven't picked up as yet. So I'm quite excited about that. But yes, would definitely pick up another Dudu Busani book. Definitely. I loved it.
Definitely. I also thoroughly enjoyed the book. I thought I really walked away from this book with a lot of respect for her, because, you know, typos aside, I feel like she wanted to tell a township story. She told it, and she was true to it. And there was the narrative was also redeeming in terms of the fact that nobody got away with crap. So if you did something wrong, it was going to come back to bite you. So as much as she flirted with us and made us really have this tension and this irony where we were like, oh, but, you know, I'm also feeling the passion. Oh, but I'm also feeling the heat. She also was like, yeah, but also this is the other side of it. And so, like, I think from midway through the book, when things get serious, things start to get serious. I think from the day they get married, really, when one of the kids goes missing. And, you know, like you were saying, the children were impact characters that drove the story along. This particular child is also an impact character because he's the middle child, and he drives the story along. And so he also shows up in moments of the book where big things are happening, like all the time. And you see him growing up, and like, you know, he drops a little bomb here, like something happens to him here, and it sets the family off in this direction. He gets older, he starts asking this question, whatever. So I just thought it was well deserved. It was worth the 500 pages, worth the 500-page read. She structured her world well. She gave us balance. She made it easy for us to read, like you said, the little chapters. And so you were satisfied. You were like, okay, I feel like this. But then she also left us wanting more, which makes sense because it's part of a series. So now I'm like, well, I really hope that we can find out what happens to Hlomu through the voices of the other stories. Because I haven't gotten stuck into those, or I'm secretly thinking about that. Getting a truckload of them and just going through the rest of the 4 stories on my own. But I mean, I thought it was great. And I thought for a self-published book, it was really expertly done. Of course, the typos are a big revealer, but I think being somebody in the self-publishing industry, I wondered whether they were because she had done so much editing and she was possibly changing parts of the book before she went to publish it, because I mean, it's no mean feat writing that size of a book the way that she did. So last words for us, Ntombi. So are you going to read the rest of the series? Definitely yes.
Definitely, I will be reading the rest of the series, and I think I'm really gonna push to not give too much breathing space between the books. I'll probably just get all of them and try crack through the whole lot, because I think it's one of those stories where you leave with a question there and you want it answered in the next book. So I am definitely hooked, and I would definitely be checking out the next books.
Awesome. Very awesome. I will be too, because I've got questions for Hlomu. She still needs to answer. And, Dudu has to answer some questions for me as well. And because, there were new storylines that were started in the first book, that make us want to know more. So I definitely want to know more about Nkosana. I definitely want to know more about the Zulu brothers and where this will lead us and where this will take us, this very interesting life. And for those of us who have not read the book, as is my custom, I will close off with a quote from the book. And this is a quote that captures the whole theme around the wife. So the book is entitled Hlomu The Wife. And when I first picked it up, I was like, why would she say the wife? But in the trajectory of Hlomu's story, we see many pictures of the wife in an African setting, the matriarch, the housewife, the makoti, and definitely at different defining moments in her relationship, you see these layers of this woman that is known as the wife in our African culture come to the fore. But in Hlomu's words, this is how she describes it. I think I'm becoming the wife, like, those women who look 30 when they're 23 because they're surrounded by people who've convinced them that if the marriage doesn't work, it will be their fault for not doing stuff that women must do to keep a man. The poor girls will panic at anything. The guy be saying no to dinner one night, and instead of accepting that he's not hungry, because that happens with human beings, they freak out and think he ate at another woman's house. They don't even consider the most probable factor, that they are bad cooks, and the man deserves a break once in a while, hence he grabs 3 twice 2 on his way home and eats it in the car in the garage just before walking in. Marriage comes with paranoia. It's unavoidable. And just in true Hlomu fashion, she's highlighting something, she's observing something about herself, but at the same time, she makes us laugh. She laughs us into that very startling observation about what she has become and how her love is changing her. So Hlomu, the wife, we tried not to give you spoilers if you haven't read it, but next time, because I'm pretty sure we're going to have Ntombi back, we won't promise to protect you from the spoilers. Ntombi, it's been great spending time with you this evening. Any last words before we sign off?
It's been lovely, Selina. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who managed to join in. Last words, definitely coming back. I will be here at any call. I'll be happy to tackle any other title with you. Words, definitely find me on social media at Ntombi _underscore Ntombi M_ on Twitter and Instagram. And then obviously IBHUKU for all my bookish content and experiences on YouTube. So you can just search IBHUKU and you'll find me. But thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
Awesome. Thanks, Ntombi. And if you guys are curious about her content, if you look on the Thando channel Facebook page, we've linked to her YouTube channel and you can see one of her reviews there. And we'll repost those links again for you in the comment box thread to this live. Thank you, Ntombi. It was great spending time with you. And thank you, book clubbers. Thank you for joining this discussion. I hope that you enjoyed Hlomu The Wife, and when you are done reading it, please let us know. You can catch us both on Twitter and continue on the Buddy Read thread that we started, or you can just continue on the comments to this live. High five, everybody, and we'll see you again here on Facebook next week, 7 p.m. and YouTube at the same time. This has been the Thando Book Club channel. I'm your host, Selina Zgomo, with the incomparable Ntombi Malaza from IBHUKU. Thank you very much.